What'd y'all do last night? You know, a lot of people didn't see this coming. Yeah, it's being called the most shocking upset in the history of presidential politics. Our new president...
Well, we were on Lifetime last night.
Right.
And I was slowly getting drunk is what happened to me.
Were you really?
Yes, she was.
Not really.
This is just in. Florida went the other way. I'm just kidding.
You know, it was a rough night for everybody, I think. You know, we're worried. The people are worried. You know, okay, he's the president. Now what? We're watching you, okay?
Yeah.
What scares me the most, I don't know what scares all the rest of you the most, is that not since George W. Bush has there been a White House, a Senate, and a House of Representatives all from the same party. And then the FBI has stuck its nasty little nose in the middle of this, plus the Supreme Court, who knows where that's going to go. So the only checks and balances we have are us, the View. That's it.
That sounds great in theory, but one of the things he did was he blocked media out of things. They weren't even allowed to go on his plane.
Yeah, but we're not going on his plane. We're going to stay right here and talk.
Yeah, but remember, within the party, and I've been talking about this a lot, within the Republican Party, there are such bold differences. You have a libertarian wing of the party. I've always said, how does John McCain and Rand Paul wind up in the same party? They disagree fundamentally on foreign policy issues. I mean, Hillary Clinton was far more hawkish in her speech than Donald Trump was. So I think there are a lot of checks still. I think the Republican Party is trying to figure out who they are and what they stand for. And Donald Trump will want to do some things that people in that party will not approve of and will stand up against. And they will fight for other things that he necessarily doesn't represent. So just because something says Republican doesn't mean that there's a consensus on issues. I can say that for sure.
We'll see.
Well, plus you're here. You're here to take him on every minute of the day.
That's right. That's right. You know, and I'm already on his enemies list, as are you, Whoopi. So.
Last thought. The only thing that I think the scary part for me was maybe being caught off guard that I wasn't in touch with the country I live in, and that maybe I am in a bubble. When critics come out on social media and say, you don't know what the world's about, sadly now I woke up and I thought maybe I don't. Like, it really was like a punch in the gut, you know.
I have to say, my heart is beating so fast. I'm a little nervous to even speak today. I honestly didn't think I'd be sitting on this side of it this morning.
You thought she was going to win?
I didn't think Donald was going to win.
No one.
And I can't say that I'm upset about it. I know that over half of America voted him in and are happy that he's there. And yet, I'm in this room with a lot of people that don't seem to be happy about it. And although there's so many things, the way that he has spoken and talked about people that I absolutely do not agree with, I was a person that voted on policy. And so in that sense, I am happy with the result. And yet, if anything, I hope, no matter which side you are on, it brings all of us as a people to a horizontal posture, that it brings us to our knees, our face to the floor, that we pray for our country, that we pray for him, whether you think he could turn this upside down, or you're praying that he will uphold the positions that he said he would. I pray that we come together for that in humility, because God says when we humble ourselves.
Well, yeah, God says a lot of wonderful stuff. It really does. And I like God a lot. But I have to say that given the bigger picture of what Donald Trump represents, it is not so comfortable for me. Because not only does he now threaten how things are going to be done with kids of color, with women's rights, with my right to decide what is right for my body, not what somebody else says what is right. That for somebody, not just my rights about my body, but, you know, my friends' children are afraid because this fool has said, and I know he's the president, but for me, when you scare children by saying you're not going to let them stay in the country and you're going to separate them out, children don't know what you're talking about. They hear these things and it's crazy. And this is a bigger picture. This is bigger than him. This ripples out in so many different, affects gay folks, gay marriage, transgender people. This has huge effects. Whether we are a nation who believes in people's rights as they are constitutionally guaranteed, whether we're a nation that believes in the rights as God has guaranteed, whatever you believe, no child should be afraid that their parents are going to be taken away because they're Muslim or because they're Mexican or because they're black. No kid should ever have to deal with that. And that, to me, is an issue.
And that's why I pray for unity. And I do believe that God is sovereign and can use the most unlikely and unimaginable people to change things. And if this 4 years doesn't go the way that the American people hope for that voted him in, then I pray it's a kick in the pants that we all find a candidate that comes together for a more common ground for all of us over the next 4 years.
Well, what would be great, yes, go ahead. Yes. You know, and all those things are great. But for people who don't have a relationship with God, that is your relationship, or anybody else's relationship, what do they do?
I think they wait to see what he does, because a reminder to everyone is this man has been on both sides of many issues. He was pro-choice, then he was pro-life. He was supporting government-run health care, and now he's opposing Obamacare. So my concern with him was we really don't know what he's going to do. I don't think he's going to be some conservative warrior in there.
Listen, I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about
who he's going to hire,
who he's going to put around him. What I've seen around him gives me pause. What I see is stop and frisk coming back. What I see are things that I don't want to see anymore. But people didn't think about that. They voted their conscience and their issue, and, you know, you get what you deserve. We got what we deserve. A lot of people voted for him, and we'll see what happens.
You know what I learned?
What did you learn?
I learned that, as usual, men can get away with anything, and women can get away with nothing. That's what I learned. Unbelievably divisive, bigoted, racist, homophobic, against handicapped people, against John McCain, and yet he won. She made some mistakes, but not like that.
But that's not what they were voting on. People were looking at their Obamacare, their health insurance costs skyrocket. They were looking at the fact that they can't put food on the table.
They were looking on Obamacare to put him over the edge.
22% hike.
You know what? Let's see. I want to see what he's going to do next, because he promised that he's going to repeal Obamacare and put in something else. Now, I like his people to remember. He once said he believes in single payer. So let's see. You know what that is? Socialism.
It is. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Like Bernie said.
You know what? It happened.
He's not going to do anything he says.
Well, if he doesn't, we can kick his ass out.
He's going to build a wall.
You know, there is such a thing called impeachment, you know. But you know, look, we still have to put food on the table. We still have to go to work every day. We still have to feed our kids. And, you know, we've walked through these fires before. This is not the first time this has happened.
And here's the good news. Comedians are going to have a ball.
Yeah, it might be a while before we start laughing again, though. We'll be right back.
Does losing this election mean Hillary Clinton's political career is over? ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd hits the table later.
Okay, America, I dare you to watch The View this Friday, because if you do, you're going to see a surprise 20 years in the making.
You won't believe what you see. Friday on The View.
As people are still trying to process what happened last night, joining our post-election view right now is ABC News political analyst Matthew Dowd. Matthew, welcome. Were you as stunned as a great many people were.
I was stunned because everything, all the evidence, all the data, all the information, and actually both political campaigns, the RNC and the DNC, the Trump campaign and the Clinton campaign, all had the same data, and they all thought Donald Trump was going to lose and Hillary Clinton was going to win.
How did people get it so wrong?
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a long story to this race. I think that I say it's an unprecedented, but in many ways it's been predictable because of what's been going on in our country in the last 25 or 30 years. This has been building for a long period of time. This sort of two Americas, some people left behind, some people not, the elites, all of that's a whole thing, Hollywood. It sort of culminated, and we've seen signs of it, and culminated in this year. I thought Donald Trump would win the GOP primary, but then I thought he would have a difficult time when he was faced with 125 million Americans that were going to vote. Yeah. But in this case, what happened was, with two flawed candidates in the American public's mind, they decided they wanted to pick the flawed outsider instead of the flawed insider. And that was fundamentally the decision a chunk of America made. But one thing to keep in mind is Hillary Clinton is going to win the popular vote by probably 2 million votes.
Amazing.
But lose the Electoral College.
Well, that's happened to Gore, too, didn't it?
It happened to Gore.
Yeah. So we can't follow polls anymore. Is that what you're saying?
No, I actually, I think this is a...
I think so.
Yeah.
I think this is a very special circumstance, but I think we've also seen it unfold globally. I mean, everybody talks about what happened with Brexit, but we've also seen certain candidates elected in France, certain candidates elected in Germany, certain candidates elected in South America. This is a movement, and Donald Trump isn't a conservative. And he's not really a liberal.
What is he?
And he's not really a Republican.
Not sure.
He's not really. He's a nationalist.
A nationalist.
Donald Trump is a nationalist, and there's a group of voters that have been under economic turmoil for 30 years. They haven't seen their wages increase. They haven't gotten a good job for 25 years through Democrats, Republicans, and Democrats.
Yeah.
And they want some protectionism or whatever he thinks.
Yeah, but they blame it on Mexicans. They blame it on immigrants. The robot is taking their job.
Obama.
And they blame Obama. That's not rational.
Well, voters aren't always rational in this. But I think we have to give. I think we should always separate Donald Trump from the voters, right? And I think it's always a mistake to go after the voters. I think there are some people among his voters that are in many ways deplorable. Some of his voters.
The Klan and the Nazi Party. Like that.
Yeah, KKK.
Those are the deplorables that Hillary was referring to.
But I also think we have to understand where they come from. They are the vast chunk. When you take out the coast, they're the vast chunk of America in between. And they represent at least half the country right now.
On that note, I want to ask you, we heard Donald Trump's speech last night, and he talked a lot about unity, how he was going to be the president to all Americans. But you have so many people who dislike him and who are devastated by these results. How does he even begin to ease people's minds that some of these comments that he made in the past that were divisive doesn't mean that he's not going to turn around now and be everyone's president?
Well, I think that's a very crucial point. I was happy to see his speech yesterday, which seemed to be the most measured, calm words that he's spoken in the course of this. I think he sent out a tweet.
Was he medicated?
I don't know. It's possible. If he was, he needs to stick with it. But I think what Americans are going to look at, and all of us, and you made a really good point. I think this is a moment in time when we ought to drop the temperature down a good bit, calmly do this. And I think he needs to be confronted with many of the things, but in a respectful manner. I've always believed that our leaders are not really leaders, they're followers, and they follow what we do, the patterns that we do. And I think that we would make a mistake if we start patterning ourselves on the ways he acts instead of trying to pattern it back. So I just say lower the temperature and sort of give it a chance, but watch his actions, not his words.
Yep.
And Trump made big promises during this election, building a wall, defeating ISIS, repealing Obamacare. Where does he start when he gets into office? Where do you think he'll go?
I noticed something last night that was, he didn't bring up that at all in his conversation. You know what he brought up? Infrastructure. He brought up saying we need to reinvest in our roads, our airports, our hospitals, and all that, which would be, he'd get Republican support and Democrat support on that. And so I think that was a smart thing to say, because then he could quickly get a win, and he needs a win, and he can show to reach across party lines.
That was exactly what Obama suggested in the jobs bill, that the Republicans said no, 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 no. And now he's going to do it.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, and a lot of people who voted for him are going to say, oh, he's creating jobs. Obama wanted to do that, and the Republicans were like, no, those are not capitalism jobs. Those are federal jobs. It's not the same thing. And they vetoed that.
But if he can get it done, if there's something he could get done, it's good.
Yeah, but at least tell the truth of why he's getting it done.
Well, I think we should start. I mean, I agree. I think the Republicans were obstructionists in the course of the presidency.
Yes.
I actually fault Barack Obama, who I voted for, and I think has turned out to be one of our great leaders in this.
Yes.
But I think he didn't do enough. I don't think he did enough in the actual process of building relationships as opposed to transactions in this. I'm hoping Donald Trump has learned this. I mean, to me, as I sat with this morning and where the bulk of the country was, I think a lot of people are worried. A lot of people concerned. It's almost like that scene in The Hangover when you get up and,
now you're talking.
and Mike Tyson's tiger is in the room.
There's
and
a jungle cat in the
there's a
bathroom.
baby in the closet, and people are like, "What happened last night?" And you got to go through the pictures and figure out what happened.
Well, it's in many ways what happened with Barack Obama, because the day after he was elected, it was like people were like, what?
Yeah.
Wait a minute, what? Oh, that was who was on the stage? I mean, it was like a shot. Look, we will always have
one of
regrets.
the things, you know, one of the things I think that a lot of people, the glass ceiling wasn't broken last night, right? And that's a glass ceiling. It took 140 years for women to get the right to vote. And it's been 100 years since a woman was first elected to Congress. And I was thinking about this morning. When the first Catholic ran for president, which was 1928, and lost, Al Smith, it took 32 more years after that loss. John F. Kennedy won. I hope it's not going to take 32 years, but I think that's a big failure of this is, and I think there's a lot of people out there, and especially women and young girls, that ceiling wasn't broken at somebody that everybody believed was the most experienced, competent person to ever run for president, though flawed.
Yeah.
But she broke ceilings along the way.
Everybody's flawed.
So do you think that the message, I mean, because we're talking a little bit about what we're going to say to kids. You know, after we tell kids you have to make sure that you study, and you have to make sure that you're not a bully, and you have to make sure that you treat people respectfully and not be thuggish or racist. And kids waking up saying, well, how did this, because what do you say?
It trickles down.
Well, yeah, I have a daughter and I have 3 sons, and I think it's a big concern, because I think that we look to our leaders to sort of say, what are the ideals that we live by, right? And we look at them and we say, how we practice. I think it's one of the great things about Barack Obama and Michelle Obama. It's a family that you sort of look at no matter your politics and say, that's an ideal that we live up to. And I'm concerned about how people normalize they treat women in this. I think it's a big concern. And all of a sudden you watch this and it doesn't normalize bad behavior. Again, I think we have to sit back and say, regardless of Donald Trump right now, and let's hope and pray and hope he's vested with a power that we have not seen in him, and that he does something differently. He can be a flawed character that gets us to a better place, but I think we ultimately have to sit back in our own families and decide how we want to be.
I like that. You know, Matthew, you should come more often. That's great. We like hanging out. Thanks to Matthew Dowd. Of course, we'll be back with more Hot Topics. You know, we were just talking about kids and some of the things that are happening, but last night, CNN's Van Jones had a disturbing theory about one of the things that may have led to Trump's victory. Take a look. So, what do you think?
I agree about the unity part, about Trump's need to bring everyone together, but I disagree about the white lash. And the reason is that President Obama he got elected in 2008, and he got reelected. And a lot of white people came out and voted for him. He got a lot of those voters. The country united in 2008. I don't care if you were Hispanic or African-American or Caucasian. I don't care what you were. You united under his message of hope and change, and then you reelected him. So I don't think people were rejecting President Obama. This had nothing to do with race for me. This had to do with 2 flawed candidates and people wanting change. Just the way they did want in 2008. They wanted change. And this time they wanted an outsider, and they looked at Hillary Clinton and they said, I don't think she's going to bring change. I think she's part of the establishment. The system is broken. She's part of a broken system. Let's go with someone else.
President Obama did not pour gasoline on racism and say, go light a match. He did not do that. This guy did that. That's the difference between Obama and Trump.
But they weren't voting against President Obama. They're voting against Hillary
This guy
Clinton.
exacerbated and pulled out of the woodwork all the racism that was underlying there.
One thing that happened, though, I was actually talking with Matthew Dowd behind the scenes, and he was saying that some of the people that didn't actually show up were Democrats. And one of the things that could be identified as a problem is right away from the beginning, everyone put their weight behind, well, Hillary will be the candidate. It was almost like, I'm not saying any systems were rigged. I'm just saying the DNC in their own mind and everyone in the public had decided Hillary's going to be our representative. But they maybe didn't listen to what other people in the party may have wanted, because that was the number that didn't reflect what everyone else was saying.
Yeah, that's probably true. That they didn't have really enough of a primary fight.
To really go back and forth. And
Donald Trump actually had a higher turnout in Latino and black voters than Mitt Romney did.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he said the
Unbelievable.
system was rigged.
Yeah, right. You know, can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
You know, because Matthew Dowd made this point about how, I just was thinking while he was here, about how the leaders of the country follow the people. Remember when he said that?
Yeah.
Well, that may be true in some cases, but in this particular case, the FBI has stuck its 2 cents right into the middle of the election. So it's not, you know, in other words, it reeks of some kind of a nefarious outsider, the FBI, coming into the middle of the process. So it's not just about the people. It's about these organizations that are like, I don't want to use the word conspiring, but who are involved in our freedoms.
But that's
the problem.
Many of the people who voted for him agree with you, and maybe not in the same respect with respect to the FBI, but they're saying the system is broken. The establishment is broken. We had WikiLeaks emails saying there was collusion between the Justice Department and the Clinton campaign.
Those WikiLeaks came from not necessarily a good source, and people went to town on them.
Well, they weren't disavowed, though. Nobody came out and said this isn't true.
Well, but, you know, if you're using crappy stuff, what do you, why do I have to say, hey, this is crap when you know it's crap? Why do I have to
identify? Because we don't know. Voters don't know. Unless you say this isn't true, they don't know.
I don't even, that doesn't work. Listen, you can say that there was no white lash. There was a little bit of white lash. I remember, I have to say, you know, I've watched what's happened in America over the last 8 years. Yeah, he did win 4 years ago. And from that time also came all of the jokes about he's not American, he's not this, he's not that. And, you know, hearing people make sort of the kind of off-center racist joke that isn't, you know.
About his children,
or someone who said, and I'm not going to say who it was, but it was somebody sort of high up who said, you know, to think of it, this is a guy that would have been parking my car. And I looked at him.
Who said that?
I'm not telling you who said it.
All right. Tell me later.
But
Tell me later.
No, because the point is not who said it. The point is that it was said.
Yeah.
You know, and from, you know, accusing him of looking like Curious George, all the stuff. You know, so suddenly when you hear all of this and you hear all the obstructionist stuff, and you think, well, damn. Well, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be doing this to somebody else. Why are you doing this?
Well, the whole birthday thing was based on his race.
You have to, and you don't have to understand it. You don't have to get it. But people of color know what this means. We know. Because it's part of the underlying conversation. Because it's been part of our conversation for 8 years. Because no president has ever had to deal with this. None. So there is a lot of that, and whether you agree with it or not, as a black person and a person of color and a person who's been paying attention to this, it does have some of that.
And don't you think that all these white people were...
I honestly feel if President Obama could have run for a third term, I think he would have beat Donald Trump. I think he would have won. That's not racism then, though.
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. It's not about whether President Obama is running. It's been what you've heard for the last 4 years is, you know, he doesn't speak for us. He doesn't know anything about us. He doesn't have our best interests at heart. Who are they talking about?